In a mansion filled with opulence and unspoken tensions, Gianna, a nurse burdened by her struggles, steps into an unexpected role. Hired to care for the ailing Mr. Gregg, she finds herself in the middle of a profound personal transformation. As Mr. Gregg's health declines, he requests an unusual favor for Gianna to pretend to be his daughter for a day, a final wish steeped in the desire for familial comfort and normalcy amidst his loneliness. As the day unfolds with Gianna fulfilling his last wish, a shocking twist awaits. Carly, Mr. Gregg's wife, arrives with a lawyer, revealing the deep secrets and unexpected resolutions that will change Gianna's life forever. What begins as a touching act of compassion culminates in a dramatic revelation that leaves Gianna grappling with the complexities of family, inheritance, and personal sacrifice. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. Gianna's heart fluttered with a mixture of hope and trepidation. This was the opportunity she had been desperately waiting for, a chance to escape her mounting financial troubles and find some stability in her life. She glanced around her cluttered kitchen, where the reality of her struggles had been ever present, and felt a surge of determination. "Yes, I can come today," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady despite the rush of emotions. "Could you please provide me with the address?" As Carly gave her the details, Gianna quickly gathered her few belongings and prepared for the interview. Her light brown hair, usually a mess of tangles, was pulled back into a more organized bun, and she made a concerted effort to present herself as neatly as possible. She had little time to dwell on her appearance, though the urgency of the situation demanded swift action. When Gianna arrived at the mansion, she was struck by its grandeur. The opulence of the place contrasted sharply with her modest living conditions, making her feel both awed and anxious. As she was greeted by a housekeeper and shown to the room where the interview would take place, she couldn't help but feel a pang of apprehension. This was her chance, but she was acutely aware of the high stakes involved. Carly met her at the door with a polite smile. "Welcome, Gianna. I'm glad you could make it on such short notice. Mr. Gregg is eager to meet you." Gianna followed Carly through the lavish halls, her nerves a tangled mess. Finally, they reached a private room where Mr. Gregg lay, his condition serious. His frail form was juxtaposed with the imposing setting, highlighting the vulnerability that wealth could not shield. Mr. Gregg looked up as Gianna entered, his expression a mixture of hope and fatigue. Despite his weakened state, his eyes carried a glint of resolve. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice hoarse but earnest. "I understand that this is an unusual request, but I need someone who can provide not only excellent care but also emotional support during this difficult time." Gianna nodded, her resolve hardening as she met his gaze. "I'm here to do my best," she assured him, her voice steady. "I've had extensive experience in caregiving and am fully committed to helping you." Mr. Gregg's eyes softened, and he managed a weak smile. "I appreciate that more than you know. There's something else I need to discuss with you, an unusual request, but one that's important to me. I need you to temporarily step into the role of my daughter for a single day." The request took Gianna by surprise, and she could only manage a confused look. "Your daughter?" "Yes," Gregg confirmed, his tone heavy with emotion. "I am aware this is unconventional, but the need for connection and a semblance of family in my final days has become crucial to me. I hope you can understand." Gianna hesitated for a moment, processing the gravity of his words. Despite her initial shock, she recognized the deep loneliness behind his request and the unique opportunity it presented. She was not one to shy away from challenges, and the role of a surrogate daughter, though unusual, seemed like a chance to provide the kind of human connection that Gregg so desperately needed. "I'll do it," she said finally, her decision resolute. "If it means bringing some comfort to you at this time, I'll take on the role for that day." Gregg's eyes filled with gratitude, and Carly offered a supportive nod. Thank you, Gianna. It means a lot to us both." As Gianna left the mansion that day, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The role she had agreed to play was one of deep emotional significance, and though it was fraught with complexity, she was determined to fulfill it with sincerity. Little did she know that this unexpected turn of events would soon lead to revelations that would profoundly impact her life in ways she could never have anticipated. Gianna's worry only deepened as she took in Mr. Gregg's condition. His frail form and the difficulty he faced with each breath painted a grim picture of his state. As she continued to adjust his position and offer comfort, she couldn't help but feel a growing concern about the level of care he was receiving. After the immediate crisis had passed, Gianna took a moment to reassess the situation. She knew that her next steps needed to be carefully considered. "Mr. Gregg, I want to make sure you're getting the best care possible," she said gently. "Can you tell me more about your current treatment and daily routine? I want to understand how I can help." Mr. Gregg's eyes, though tired, shone with appreciation. "I've been through so much," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "The doctors have done what they can, but Carly, she hasn't been very involved. She's been preoccupied with other things." Gianna's concern grew. "I understand. I'll do my best to ensure you're comfortable and well taken care of. If you need anything, don't hesitate to let me know." As she began her duties, Gianna made sure to address Mr. Gregg's immediate needs, administering medications, ensuring he was properly hydrated, and adjusting his bedding for maximum comfort. She kept a watchful eye on him, ready to respond to any signs of distress. When Carly re-entered the room later, she seemed somewhat taken aback by the visible changes Gianna had made. Her demeanor remained cold, but there was a hint of surprise in her eyes. "You seem to have managed well," Carly remarked, though her tone remained indifferent. "I'll leave you to it." Gianna took Carly's departure as an opportunity to further assess Mr. Gregg's condition. She continued to speak to him with kindness, asking about his needs and preferences. Her thorough care provided a small sense of relief amid his suffering, and Mr. Gregg's gratitude was palpable. In the days that followed, Gianna remained vigilant and determined to provide the best care possible despite the challenging circumstances. Her dedication did not go unnoticed by Mr. Gregg, who began to open up more about his life, his regrets, and the complex dynamics with his wife. Gianna listened with empathy, offering him both physical and emotional support. One evening, as Gianna sat by Mr. Gregg's bedside, he looked at her with a mixture of gratitude and sadness. "Gianna, I want to thank you for everything you've done," he said softly. "Your care and kindness have been a blessing in these final days." Gianna's heart ached at his words. "It's my honor to help you, Mr. Gregg. I only wish I could have met you under different circumstances." Mr. Gregg gave a faint smile. "You've brought me comfort and dignity when I needed it most. I can't express how much that means to me." As the days wore on, Gianna remained a steadfast presence in Mr. Gregg's life, providing him with the care and compassion he so desperately needed. Her unwavering commitment not only alleviated his physical suffering, but also offered a semblance of emotional connection that was deeply meaningful in his final moments. Gianna's dedication to her role was a testament to her character, and though the circumstances were heartbreaking, she found solace in knowing she had made a profound difference in Mr. Gregg's life during his last days. As Gianna continued to navigate the demanding role of caring for Mr. Gregg, her health began to deteriorate alongside his. Each day, she found herself increasingly exhausted, struggling to balance the intense responsibilities of her job with her well-being. Despite her mounting fatigue, her commitment to Mr. Gregg remained unwavering. The sight of his continued struggle and the thought of leaving him vulnerable in Carly's care weighed heavily on her. Gianna's routine became a grueling cycle of medication schedules, physical adjustments, and emotional support. The mansion, once a symbol of luxury, now felt like a battleground where she fought tirelessly to ensure Mr. Greg's comfort and safety. Her own needs took a backseat as she devoted herself fully to her patient. One afternoon, as she sat beside Mr. Greg, adjusting his pillows and ensuring his medications were administered on time, Carly entered the room with an air of detachment. "Gianna," Carly said curtly, "I need you to focus on your responsibilities. You're here to care for Mr. Greg, not to neglect your duties." Gianna, her energy waning, nodded wearily. "I'm doing my best to ensure Mr. Greg receives the care he needs," she replied, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "If there's any way I can improve or make things better, please let me know." Carly's eyes narrowed. "I'm more concerned about you burning out. We can't have both of you in such poor condition. You need to be more mindful of your health." Gianna's heart sank. She knew Carly's concerns were not entirely genuine, but there was truth in the underlying message. Her health was rapidly declining, and she could no longer ignore the warning signs. Reluctantly, she decided to seek medical attention for herself, despite the fear of leaving Mr. Greg unattended. One evening, after ensuring that Mr. Greg was stable and comfortable, Gianna left the mansion to visit a nearby clinic. The doctor's visit confirmed her worst fears. She was suffering from severe fatigue and a respiratory infection. The doctor advised her to take a break and prioritize her recovery, warning that further neglect could lead to more serious health issues. With a heavy heart, Gianna returned to the mansion to inform Mr. Greg of her situation. "Mr. Greg, I've been advised to take some time off to recover," she said, her voice filled with regret. "I'll arrange for someone to cover for me temporarily, but I promise I'll return as soon as I'm able." Mr. Greg looked at her with concern, his health visibly affected by the news. "Gianna, you've done so much for me already. I want you to get well and take care of yourself. We'll manage with the interim caregiver. Your health is important too." Carly, who had been listening from the doorway, interjected with a sense of urgency. "Gianna, I hope you realize how serious this situation is. You need to take care of yourself, or you won't be able to help anyone." Gianna nodded, tears welling in her eyes as she left the mansion. She felt a deep sadness at the thought of leaving Mr. Greg, but she knew that she had to follow the doctor's orders. As she rested and recovered, she hoped that the temporary caregiver would provide the same level of care and compassion that she had strived to offer. In the weeks that followed, Gianna focused on her recovery while keeping in touch with Mr. Greg and ensuring that he was receiving the care he needed. The experience had been a profound journey of dedication and selflessness, and as she regained her strength, she reflected on the impact she had made and the bonds she had formed. Despite the challenges, Gianna remained hopeful that her efforts had made a difference in Mr. Greg's life, and that the connection they shared would continue to inspire her as she moved forward in her journey. Gianna's heart ached as she listened to Mr. Greg's fragile plea. The gravity of his request weighed heavily on her, mixing with her confusion and empathy. The mansion, once a symbol of luxury and distance, now felt like a place where personal boundaries were blurring and emotional connections were deepening in unexpected ways. Mr. Greg, Gianna began gently, her voice steady despite the turmoil she felt inside. "I understand how important this is to you. I'll do my best to fulfill your request." She glanced at the unfamiliar medication and documents, her mind racing with questions about their significance, but recognizing that now was not the time to probe further. Mr. Greg's tired eyes softened with gratitude, and he managed a faint smile. "Thank you, Gianna. Your kindness means more to me than you can imagine," he said, his voice strained but sincere. "You've given me more comfort and care than I've received in a long time. Just for today, let me have this small comfort of family." Gianna nodded, her resolve firm despite the emotions swirling within her. "I'll make sure to respect your wishes," she promised, her heart heavy with the weight of the responsibility she was about to undertake. As she prepared to step into the role of Mr. Greg's daughter, Gianna faced a series of challenges. She needed to act with sensitivity and empathy, knowing that this act of pretending to be his family was not merely about fulfilling a request, but about providing a moment of solace in the face of his impending end. The day unfolded with a blend of solemnity and sincerity. Gianna took on the role of Mr. Greg's daughter with quiet dignity, attending to him with the care and tenderness one might expect from a loved one. She spoke to him softly and shared anecdotes and memories that, while fabricated, were designed to bring comfort and a sense of closeness. The mansion's opulence felt distant and unimportant compared to the simple act of being present and offering emotional support. Throughout the day, Gianna remained attentive to Mr. Greg's needs, handling his medications with the utmost care and ensuring that the documents were kept out of sight. She offered him reassurance and companionship, creating a semblance of familial connection that seemed to ease his distress. Despite the artificiality of the role, Gianna's genuine compassion and dedication shone through, providing Mr. Greg with the comfort he sought. As evening approached and Mr. Greg's condition showed signs of stabilization, Gianna took a moment to reflect on the day's events. The mansion's grandeur seemed less imposing, and the personal connection she had forged with Mr. Greg gave her a deeper understanding of the impact of her actions. When the day came to an end, Gianna found herself emotionally drained but fulfilled. She had honored Mr. Greg's final request and provided him with a measure of peace during a time of great vulnerability. As she prepared to leave, Mr. Greg expressed his heartfelt gratitude once more, his eyes reflecting a mixture of relief and sadness. "Thank you, Gianna," he whispered, his voice trembling. "You've given me a gift I'll never forget." Gianna offered a warm smile, her own eyes misting with emotion. "It was an honor to be here for you, Mr. Greg. I hope you find comfort and peace in the time you have left." As she stepped out of the mansion, Gianna felt a profound sense of accomplishment and compassion. The role she had played, though temporary, had offered both her and Mr. Greg a moment of connection and understanding that transcended the confines of their usual roles. The experience left her with a renewed sense of purpose and a deep appreciation for the small, meaningful acts of kindness that could make a profound difference in someone's life. Moved by the profound vulnerability in Mr. Greg's eyes, Gianna nodded resolutely. "I will do what she promised," her voice firm yet tender. "I will pretend to be your daughter and support you in every way I can." With this vow, she dedicated herself to Mr. Greg's care, treating him with the love and devotion she would offer her father. The day unfolded as a poignant blend of tears and tender moments, a heartfelt tribute to Mr. Greg's final wish for familial connection and comfort. As twilight descended and the mansion's grandeur was bathed in the dim light of evening, the sound of the doorbell echoed through the cavernous hallway, breaking the quiet. Carly entered, flanked by a stern-faced lawyer, their presence radiating a heavy seriousness. The atmosphere thickened with tension as they made their way toward Mr. Greg's room. When the door creaked open, Carly's gaze fell upon Gianna with a mixture of disapproval and disbelief, while the lawyer observed silently, his demeanor inscrutable. Mr. Greg, his voice a strained whisper but imbued with unwavering resolve, addressed the gathered visitors. "My dear wife," he began, his words a blend of affection and finality, "allow me to introduce you to my daughter, Gianna. She has been my devoted caretaker and companion throughout these last days." Carly's face shifted from skepticism to utter shock as the gravity of Mr. Greg's words sank in. "I have made a decision," Mr. Greg continued, his hands trembling slightly as he handed over a stack of legal documents. "I have updated my will. Everything I possess is to be bequeathed to Gianna. She has shown me more care and warmth than anyone else in my life." Carly's eyes widened in disbelief as the lawyer began to articulate the revisions to the will, his voice steady and authoritative. The room fell into a profound silence, interrupted only by the faint rustling of papers and Carly's muffled sobs, which spoke of a crushing surprise. Gianna, her heart a turbulent sea of emotions, looked at Mr. Gregg with deep gratitude and sadness. The unexpected turn of events had transformed her life in ways she could hardly fathom. As Mr. Gregg's final wish was fulfilled, Gianna felt a profound ache, a bittersweet blend of loss and newfound purpose. Her heart was heavy with the weight of his final gesture, a testament to the unexpected bonds formed in the twilight of life. As the final legalities were concluded and Carly departed, Gianna stood alone in the quiet room, her mind reeling from the day's emotional upheaval. She had assisted a man in fulfilling his final wish, and in the process, uncovered profound truths about family, selflessness, and the human connection. Since the onset of her illness, Gianna had been forced to remain by Mr. Gregg's side, unable to afford the luxury of falling ill. Exhausted and overwhelmed, she took a taxi, sinking into the rear seat and gathering her remaining strength. Her eyes fell upon her uniform, where she had concealed the unopened envelopes Mr. Gregg had entrusted to her. With a heart full of apprehension, she whispered a fervent prayer, "Please, my God, let there be something useful inside." Driven by her commitment to her patient, she carefully broke the seal of one envelope. To her shock, the contents were not what she had anticipated. Inside was a positive paternity test confirming the existence of an unknown child of Mr. Gregg. The report detailed that this child suffered from the same rare and devastating disease that was now threatening Mr. Gregg's life. There was no name on the test or any clue about how to locate this child. Who could it be? Gianna murmured, her mind racing with concern and confusion. As she arrived at the hospital, her urgency propelled her through the doors, her breath coming in short gasps as she rushed to the reception. "I need to see one of the patients. His name is Gregg," she said, her voice trembling with desperation. The receptionist, maintaining a calm and professional demeanor, regarded Gianna with a blend of sympathy and procedural detachment. "I'm sorry, but only family members are allowed to visit at this time," she replied, her tone efficient yet gentle. Gianna's heart sank as the receptionist's words echoed in her mind. Faced with a moral quandary, she recalled Mr. Gregg's last request for her to pose as his daughter. Summoning her courage, she made a decisive choice. Clutching the paternity test, she took a deep breath and fabricated a story. "I am his daughter. These documents prove it. I need to see him immediately. It's urgent," she declared, extending the papers to support her claim. The receptionist, noting that the test did not specify the child's gender, scrutinized the documents briefly. After a moment's consideration, she nodded and granted Gianna access. "Please follow me," she instructed, leading Gianna down a labyrinth of hospital corridors that seemed to stretch endlessly. As they walked, each step seemed to reverberate with Gianna's internal turmoil. "Am I doing the right thing?" she questioned herself, the weight of her deception pressing heavily on her conscience. Yet, the urgency of the situation and her commitment to honoring Mr. Gregg's final request provided her with a sense of purpose. She was determined to be by his side in his most critical moment, to uphold her promise to not let him face the darkness alone, no matter the personal cost. When Gianna finally reached the room where Mr. Gregg was being treated, her heart raced with a mix of apprehension and sorrow. She paused at the door, gathering her resolve before stepping inside. The room was a somber tableau of medical equipment and the steady beeping of monitors, each sounds a stark reminder of life's delicate balance. Mr. Gregg lay in bed, intubated and appearing alarmingly frail. The once imposing magnate was now reduced to a fragile figure, surrounded by the cold efficiency of medical machines. Beside him, a doctor was diligently recording observations on a clipboard. Gianna's chest tightened as she approached, each step heavy with the weight of her guilt and concern. "Mr. Gregg, it's me, Gianna. I came as soon as I could," she whispered, her voice a gentle caress against the backdrop of mechanical noises. She placed her hand on his, feeling the coldness that contrasted sharply with the warmth of her own. The doctor's attention shifted to her, his expression a mask of clinical detachment. "I'm his daughter," Gianna said, her voice firm despite her internal turmoil. "Can you tell me about his condition?" The necessity of the lie grated against her conscience, but she knew it was crucial to maintain the pretense. The doctor's gaze softened with professional empathy as he spoke. "Mr. Gregg is in a deep coma. Given the severity of his condition, it's unlikely he will survive the day," he said, his words striking Gianna like a physical blow. Each syllable reverberated in her mind, underscoring the gravity of the situation and the stark reality of Mr. Gregg's impending departure. Gianna's heart shattered at the news. He cannot leave this way, she thought, her resolve strengthening despite the overwhelming sadness. "I need to be alone with him, with my father," she requested, her voice barely more than a whisper as she moved closer to the bed. After the doctor left, Gianna settled into the armchair beside Mr. Gregg's bed. The room was filled with the relentless hum of medical machines and the soft, rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor. Gianna took Mr. Gregg's hand in hers, feeling the fragility of his pulse against her fingers. "Mr. Gregg," she began, her voice trembling with raw emotion, "I have not forgotten my promise. I will fulfill your last wish as you asked. Today, I will be your daughter." Tears welled in her eyes as she continued, her voice choked with sorrow and love. "If we were truly father and daughter, we would spend a perfect day together. We'd walk along the beach, free from illness and worry, sharing stories and laughter. We'd have a morning full of strength and joy, and end the afternoon with coffee by the sea. This would be the day of our dreams." Her words, laced with a mix of hope and melancholy, were a heartfelt tribute to the life Mr. Gregg had lived and the final wish he had entrusted to her. Gianna's tears fell freely as she spoke, offering comfort and a glimpse of the happiness they might have shared in another life. In the quiet, she held on to the hope that her words might bring some solace to the man who had touched her life so profoundly. The room's atmosphere shifted drastically as Carly stormed in, her presence slicing through the quiet tension like a knife. Her cold, piercing gaze locked onto Gianna, and her voice dripped with disdain. "What do you think you're doing here?" Carly's words reverberated through the room, a harsh contrast to the fragile peace Gianna had been trying to maintain. "I thought I made myself clear. You're fired, Gianna. Leave my husband alone." Despite the crushing exhaustion and the overwhelming sadness threatening to consume her, Gianna rose from the armchair with resolve. "You cannot fire me," she said firmly, though her voice wavered. "I am his daughter." She pulled out the envelope with great effort, knowing the risk she was taking. Lying to Carly was dangerous, but she had no other choice. Leaving Mr. Gregg alone with Carly, who seemed indifferent to his suffering, was not an option. Carly's reaction was far from what Gianna had hoped. Instead of surprise, Carly responded with a harsh, disdainful laugh. "You, his daughter? That's absurd. Look at you, your appearance, your clothes. You could never be part of our family." Carly sneered, her words laced with contempt that cut through the room like a cold wind. Gianna felt her heart sink under the weight of Carly's disdain, but stood her ground. "It doesn't matter what you think," she said, mustering her remaining strength. "I'm staying. He is not alone." The argument between Gianna and Carly escalated quickly, each word a sharp exchange of emotion and resolve. The situation reached a climax when the medical team, summoned by Carly's insistence, burst into the room. "This woman is disturbing the patient's peace," Carly demanded, her voice rising in authority. "I insist she be removed immediately." Gianna, overwhelmed and dizzy from the emotional and physical strain, collapsed beside Mr. Gregg's bed. As she fell, her vision blurred, and she murmured, "I will stay. I won't leave him." Her final plea was a whisper of determination, a promise that she would not abandon the man she had come to care for deeply. In that vulnerable moment, Gianna noticed a small, miraculous sign. Mr. Gregg's fingers twitched slightly, a glimmer of unexpected life. The subtle movement was faint but unmistakable, offering a glimmer of hope amidst the chaos. Despite everything, it seemed that Mr. Gregg's spirit was still clinging to life, an encouraging sign that not all hope was lost. Gianna's heart raced as she lay in the dimly lit hospital room, her thoughts swirling with urgency and fear. The opulence of her surroundings only heightened her sense of dread. "I cannot stay here," she thought with growing panic. "I can't afford this." With immense effort, she pushed through the dizziness and pain, determined to leave. She carefully removed the IVs from her arms, wincing with each tug, and struggled to sit up. Her muscles protested vehemently, but she persevered. Glancing around, she spotted her bag and the envelope containing Mr. Gregg's test results on a nearby chair. "Some nurse must have left my things here," she murmured, her voice weak but resolute. Time was of the essence. Grabbing the envelope and her phone, she dialed the number for the pharmaceutical institute listed on the paper. Each ring seemed to stretch into eternity as her anxiety mounted. The call was answered quickly by a calm, professional voice. "Dr. Patrick speaking. How can I help?" "Dr. Patrick, this is Gianna, Mr. Gregg's nurse," she said, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and determination. "He fell ill and is now hospitalized. I found your contact information in his test results. I need to know what I can do to help him." "Ah, Gianna. Yes, I'm aware of Mr. Gregg's situation," Dr. Patrick responded. "It's crucial that he's not left alone right now. We need to monitor him closely. Can you ensure that he remains under constant supervision?" Gianna's resolve faltered as she attempted to stand, her legs weak and unsteady. "Please tell me what's happening. I need to know what I can do," she pleaded, fear gripping her voice. "Has my absence already cost him his life?" Dr. Patrick's voice grew serious. "Mr. Gregg is part of a study for a revolutionary treatment for the rare disease he's suffering from. This treatment is still in its final testing phase. I'm hoping that the study results will be available today, which might allow us to proceed with the treatment, although time is running out. I will do everything possible to help him." Gianna's heart sank with the weight of the news. The gravity of the situation became painfully clear. Despite the impossibility of her condition and the situation, she knew she had to be by Mr. Gregg's side. "I'll stay with him," she said firmly. "I won't leave him alone." Dr. Patrick's voice softened slightly, offering a measure of encouragement. "Thank you, Gianna. Every moment counts. Ensure that Mr. Gregg is not left alone and keep me updated on his condition." Gianna ended the call and, with great effort, began to dress. Her strength was dwindling, but her determination burned brightly. She stumbled back to Mr. Gregg's room, where the sounds of the medical machines and the faint beeps of the monitors greeted her. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the challenge ahead. As she entered the room, she saw Mr. Gregg's fragile form lying on the bed, his breathing shallow but steady. She gently took his hand, her heart aching with a blend of hope and despair. "I'm here, Mr. Gregg," she whispered. "I'm here to keep my promise. We'll get through this together." Gianna settled into the armchair by his bed, determined to stay by his side, her resolve unwavering despite the personal cost. As the hours ticked by, she remained vigilant, a silent guardian in the battle between life and death, hoping against hope that the revolutionary treatment would come in time to save Mr. Gregg. Gianna's breath caught in her throat as she stepped into the mansion's living room and saw Mr. Gregg standing before her, his expression one of relief and gratitude. Her eyes filled with tears as she took in the sight of him alive and standing, against all odds. "Mr. Gregg," she exclaimed, her voice breaking with emotion. "You're—" Gregg raised a hand to silence her, his smile warm and genuine. "Gianna, please come in. I want to thank you properly for everything you've done. Without your dedication and sacrifice, I wouldn't be here today." Stunned and overwhelmed, Gianna stepped further into the room. "I don't understand. How is this possible? You were." Greg held up a hand to stop her questions. Dr. Patrick and his team were able to stabilize my condition and complete the treatment. The medicine worked, and I'm now on the path to recovery. Your bravery and selflessness were the reasons I'm still here. Gianna's heart swelled with a mix of relief and disbelief. I'm so glad to hear that. But what about the hospital? I can't afford. Don't worry about that, Greg interjected gently. Dr. Patrick informed me of your situation. The Institute will cover all your medical expenses, and they have taken care of everything. You've already given so much, and now it's time for us to help you. Gianna's eyes welled up with tears, not just from relief, but also from the overwhelming sense of gratitude and hope. Thank you, she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't expect. Before she could finish, Greg reached out and took her hand. There's more, he said softly. We've arranged for you to have a position at the Institute where you can continue your work and make use of your exceptional skills. It's a role that I believe will be perfect for you. Gianna's eyes widened in surprise. A job at the Institute? But... Yes, Greg affirmed, his gaze steady and kind. You've proven yourself to be not just a remarkable nurse, but a compassionate individual. The Institute has recognized your value, and I've made sure they understand how important you are. The enormity of Greg's words sank in, and Gianna felt a profound sense of relief. Thank you. I don't know how to express my gratitude. This is more than I could have ever hoped for. Greg squeezed her hand gently. You've earned it. And now, let's focus on the future. You've done your part, and we're here to support you. Welcome back. As Gianna absorbed the weight of Greg's words and the kindness that surrounded her, she felt a renewed sense of hope and purpose. The mansion, which had once been a place of turmoil and uncertainty, now symbolized a new beginning. With a heart full of gratitude and a future that seemed brighter than ever, Gianna prepared to step into the next chapter of her life, one where she could continue to make a difference and find fulfillment in ways she hadn't imagined before. Greg looked deeply into Gianna's eyes, his expression softening with compassion and sincerity. Yes, Gianna, he said gently. The test results were conclusive. You are my daughter. I know this might be overwhelming, but I wanted to wait until you were here to tell you personally. Gianna's emotions surged uncontrollably, tears streaming down her face. I don't understand, she stammered, clutching the envelope tightly. How could I be your daughter? I had no idea. All this time I thought the request was just to comfort you. Greg placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, his own eyes moist with emotion. I'm sorry for not telling you sooner. I didn't know how to reveal it until I was certain. My illness and the tests revealed the truth, and I knew I had to find you. You've shown so much kindness and strength, and now I understand why. Gianna's heart raced as she tried to process the incredible revelation. But why me, she asked, her voice trembling. Why would you want me to pretend to be your daughter? Greg sighed, a mixture of relief and sadness in his eyes. I needed someone who would care for me selflessly. Someone who could help me through my final days with the love and compassion I always wanted. It turns out that you were not just a caregiver, but also my flesh and blood. I couldn't have asked for a better person to stand by my side. Gianna's mind whirled with a flood of questions and emotions. The thought of having a family she had never known, of being connected to someone in such a profound way, was both exhilarating and bewildering. I've always dreamed of having a family, she said, her voice breaking. But I never imagined it would be like this. Greg nodded, his expression warm and reassuring. I understand this is a lot to take in. You have every right to feel overwhelmed. But I want you to know that you are a part of this family now, and you will always be welcome here. We can start anew, build the connection we never had the chance to before. As Greg embraced her once more, Gianna felt a deep sense of belonging she had never experienced. The long days of uncertainty, the trials she had faced, and the sacrifices she had made all seemed to converge into this moment of profound realization. She clung to Greg, feeling a mixture of joy and disbelief. At that moment, Gianna realized that her life had taken an unexpected turn, bringing her not only a chance to help someone in need, but also the opportunity to discover a family she never knew she had. The journey ahead was uncertain, but for the first time she felt hopeful and at peace with her place in the world. Gianna listened in stunned silence, her heart aching with each new revelation. The depth of Greg's words unraveled a painful history she had never known, yet it also painted a picture of a connection she had longed for her entire life. "It's so much to take in," Gianna whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I never imagined that I had a father out there, let alone that it would be someone like you. I always wondered about my mother and the family I never had." Greg nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I wish I could have done more to find you sooner. I wish I could have been there for you. The pain of knowing that your mother left you behind and the regret of not being there for you weighs heavily on me." Gianna wiped her tears, feeling a mix of sorrow and relief. "It's hard to think about what might have been," she said, her voice trembling. "But knowing the truth, having you here now, it means more than I can express. I've dreamed of having a family for so long." Greg's eyes softened, and he took her hands in his. "You are my daughter, Gianna. I'm so grateful that you're here now. Despite everything, I want to make up for lost time and build the family we should have had. I'm sorry for the hurt and confusion. I just wanted to give you a chance to have a family, even if it came too late." Gianna squeezed his hands, feeling a sense of connection she had never experienced before. "Thank you for finding me, for making the effort to connect with me. I know it's not the way I imagined meeting my father, but I'm thankful for it nonetheless." Greg took a deep breath, his expression filled with hope. "We have a chance to start anew, to build a relationship and create new memories. I want to make sure you have everything you deserve and that you know how much you mean to me." The room was filled with a mixture of emotions: grief, joy, and a deep sense of renewal. Gianna and Greg stood there, united by a newfound bond that transcended the pain of the past. Though their journey had been fraught with challenges, they now had the opportunity to forge a meaningful relationship and find solace in each other's presence. As they embraced once more, Gianna felt a profound sense of peace. Despite the hardships and uncertainties that had marked her journey, she now had a family to call her own, a connection that had eluded her for so long. In this moment, she found hope and strength in the love and acceptance that Greg offered, knowing that their story was far from over and that they had the chance to build a future together. Greg's words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of their shared past and the promise of a new beginning. The revelation of Carly's deceit was a dark shadow over their reunion, but it also highlighted the stark contrast between true family bonds and the manipulation of someone who had sought to exploit Greg's vulnerability for her gain. Gianna's heart raced as she absorbed the gravity of Greg's confession. The pain of betrayal and the joy of finding a father were intertwined, creating a complex tapestry of emotions. Despite the upheaval, she found solace in Greg's sincerity and the possibility of rebuilding their lives together. "Thank you for being honest with me," Greg, Gianna said softly, her voice steady despite her tears. "It means a lot to know that you always saw me as your daughter, even before the tests confirmed it. I'm grateful for your care and for everything you did to make sure I was safe." Greg nodded, his expression a mixture of gratitude and determination. "I wish I could have done more sooner, but we have the chance now. We can create the family we both want, a family built on love and trust. I want to make up for the time lost and ensure that you know how much you mean to me." Gianna's eyes glistened with hope. "Let's take this opportunity to heal and grow together. I want us to have the chance to build new memories and support each other." As they stood in the room filled with the remnants of their past and the promise of their future, a sense of resolution settled over them. The pain of the past would always be a part of their story, but it no longer had to define their relationship. With every word spoken and every promise made, they took steps toward a future where they could embrace their newfound connection and forge a path together. Greg extended his hand to Gianna, and she took it, feeling a profound sense of unity. The future was uncertain, but with each other's support, they felt ready to face whatever came next. The mansion, once a place of illness and betrayal, now symbolized their new beginning, a place where they could start anew and build a future grounded in love, trust, and family. As they walked together toward the next chapter of their lives, the shadows of the past began to recede, and the light of hope and possibility illuminated their path. Thank you for watching this touching story of compassion and unexpected connections. We've journeyed through the poignant experiences of Gianna and Mr. Greg, exploring themes of empathy, personal sacrifice, and the profound impact of seemingly small acts of kindness. What have you learned from this story? How has it touched you? And what lesson do you plan to bring into your own life? We would love to hear your thoughts and reflections, so please share one insight or takeaway in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave your comment, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more inspiring content. Your support helps us continue bringing these meaningful stories to life. Thank you for being part of our community.